Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada. Samasta Janakalyane Niratam Karunamaya Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidaram Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankhayate Girim Yatkrapatamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda Madhavam. Okay, let us read from verse number 41. So if you can turn to that page in your book, we will read from 41 to 45. Yeah, right? Vyavasayatmika buddhihi ekeha kuru nandana bahushakhayanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipaschitaha vedavadarataः partha nanyadastiti vadinaha kamatmanasvargaparaha janma karma palapradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishwarya gatim prati bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya pahrata chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhihi samadhau na vidhiyate. Traigunya vishaya vedaha nistraigurnyo bhavarjuna nirdvandvo nitya sattvasthaha niryogakshema atmavan. All right. So where are we in the Bhagavad Gita? In the Bhagavad Gita, we are in chapter 2 and we are seeing these verses on Karma Yoga. So if you remember verse 39, it said that, I have told you about Sankhya Buddhi, right? I have told you about Sankhya Buddhi, means I've told you about the knowledge of the self. And now I'm going to tell you Yoga Buddhi. I'm going to tell you about Karma Yoga. Why, Arjuna? Because this is what's required right now. And we will see why. So how he proceeds to tell about Karma Yoga, or also known as Yoga Buddhi, he proceeds to say how this is different from regular karma. So what we will find in verses 40 and 41, which we read today, in verse 40, he said Karma Yoga is wonderful because there's no pratyabhaya, there's no loss of effort. There's no loss of effort. You don't have to complete the action to get the result. In and through the action, one is getting purified. And even if we do a little bit of Karma Yoga, it will protect us from this samsara. Then in 41, he also praises Karma Yoga Because he says in Karma Yoga, there's what we call Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi, which means there's a single pointed determination. There's a single pointed resolve, because one's actions are dedicated towards the higher, towards God. And therefore, that person who's engrossed or engaged in Karma Yoga, very easy for them to succeed in life because they have that infinite as the goal, versus one who has infinite goals, whose energy gets dissipated in so many channels that they're not able to focus. And 1 minute of their life, they're pursuing something, and the next minute, something else. And this goes on and on and on. And they're in this wild goose chase. So he says, this is what makes Karma Yoga amazing and beautiful. And then in verses 42 to 44, we saw what karma is all about. You know, there might be people who praise karma. Karma, if we take it in the context of the Vedas, it would be ritualistic actions. But if we take karma in the context of now, what we really mean is kamya karma, or these desire-prompted actions. So many people praise these desire, prompted actions, seeking pleasure in this world. And many people will say, why don't you go here? Why don't you buy this? Why don't you try this? And there's so much pleasure in this world. And they speak about it with such flowery words. But what Lord Krishna says is, they will not be fit for the ultimate truth. Somebody who's engrossed in their own selfish desires or in continuous sensual pleasures, that mind is not going to be fit for truth, because every desire we saw is a new birth. And the moment we engage in every selfish, passionate desire, more desires grow and more desires grow and more desires grow. So that jiva is not going to be interested in pursuing something higher. They're going to get more buried into the world. So Lord Krishna says, that's regular karma. So therefore, Arjuna, go towards karma yoga. This is the mindset that I think you should have right now, instead of just regular desire-prompted actions, because that will keep you bound. Now, it's important to know in this context that it's not that the Veda, tells us you can't enjoy life. Some people say, what is this? We can't enjoy life. We can't go to a restaurant and eat. We can't go to a party. We can't do all of that. It's not that. The Veda says you can do that, but know that that's not the goal of life. What's being criticized is really pleasure as the goal of life. And when we see pleasure as the goal of life, we get stuck in it. But when we see pleasure as a means sometimes to something higher, it's something that, okay, maybe I need for right now, but eventually I have to go beyond this. Eventually I have to grow from this. If we see it as a stepping stone from which we have to evolve, then that is fine, as long as it's engaged in the right and dharmic way. So it's important to make that distinction. It's not that the Veda doesn't want us to enjoy life. In fact, they tell us, enjoy life in a dharmic way. Then from that, move on to karma yoga. From that, move on to jnana yoga, where actually we will find the most joy. So now we're on verse 45. So Lord Krishna in verse 45 is telling Arjuna, this is how to engage in karma yoga. This is how one can be prepared for it. And this is where we stopped last time. So in verse 45, he says, Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha. The Vedas have 3 subject matters, or they deal with 3 topics. And in this context, we saw it's about really the joys of the world. And when we say Veda here, it's the Karma Kanda, the Karma portion, deals with the joys of the world, the Sattvika joys of heavenly worlds, or the Rajasika joys of the world here, this world right here, or Tamasika joys, sorrows, I should say, Tamasika sorrows, Because, you know, if we perform something that's prohibited, we will go into lower worlds, or we will have lower kinds of experiences. And he says this Veda, the Karma Kanda portion, is all about these sattvic, rajasic, tamasic gains or losses. But I want you to go beyond that. I want you to be nistraygunya. Nistraygunya means I want you to be beyond these three gunas, which really means beyond these desires. I want you to be nishkama. Nishkama means be beyond these desires. Be beyond these sattvic desires. Even the sattvic desire is a desire. Be beyond these rajasic, selfish desires. And definitely be beyond these tamasic, lower and negative desires. Be beyond these, because that's what's going to get you to the ultimate truth. Now, how does he do it? How do you do it? So we talked about first nirdvandvaha. Nirdvandvaha means become free from these pairs of opposites. Always seeing something as joy or sorrow, or joy or sorrow. Be free from that kind of mindset, and you see something as growth, right? It's come to my life, and therefore this must be that which is helping me grow. There's no need to label it as joy or sorrow, or a like or dislike. Nirdvandvaha. Then we also saw nitya sattvastaha. Nitya sattvastaha means live a sattvic life. Live a sattvic life. And I remember what I asked you to do, to think about 5 ways how we can make our lives more sattvic. Live a sattvic life in whatever way we can, in our interactions, in our diet, in our lifestyle, in our words, but also in the temperament of our mind. Then he says, Niryoga-kshema. So I'll explain Niryoga-kshema, I'll explain Atmavan, then we'll see the connection to all of these words, which is really, really beautiful. Niryoga-kshema means, yoga means apraptasya praptihi, gaining what has not been gained. And kshema means praptasya rakshanam, trying to secure or protect that which has been gained. So yoga, in very simple words, means acquisition, acquiring something that I don't have yet. And kshema means protecting it, securing it. So a very basic example is that our lives are full of this yoga kshema. If we acquire a house, just a very simple example, we acquire a house, we buy a house, then what happens is we have to protect it, we have to secure it. And that takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy because something breaks down in the house, you have to fix it, somebody comes to stay, we have to clean it, we have to make sure it's presentable, you know, so many things we have to do. We have to pay rent every month. So there's a lot of effort into securing it. We acquire a lot of money we acquire. Then what happens is we have to find a place to put that money. Where are we going to put it? Other people might know we have money. All kinds of things people worry about, right? What will I do? Where will I put this money? And even something subtle as acquiring a good name. So some people like to acquire a good name, to be well liked in society, you know, to have a certain position. To protect that also takes a lot of work, you know, because you have to please people, you have to smile, you have to go to certain events, you have to do all of these things. So this yoga-kshema takes a lot. And so when we're constantly trying to acquire something and trying to protect it or secure it, there's no time to seek. There's no time to seek. So that's why he says, Niryoga-kshema. Be free from this sense of wanting to acquire and secure. And then he says, Atmavan. Atmavan means be one who is centered in God as the goal. Because it's the same, this Atmavan is what we saw as Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi. Have that single pointed determination that God, or dedicating my actions to God, right now, that's the goal. That's what I want to do. This is what Atmavan means. So now let's see the relationship of these words, right? When we say Atmavan, or dedicating my actions towards the Lord, what we mean is not just, pursuing something so noble. We mean even doing our duties to perfection. Because wherever you and I are is where God has placed us. God has placed us here for a purpose. He placed us around the people we have for a purpose. In this particular surrounding, in this atmosphere, for a purpose. Therefore, just doing my duty as a worship of God, that is Atmavan, whatever it may be. Doing it to perfection, that's a worship of God. Because I feel also that I am serving God. Whoever I am serving, whoever I'm doing my duty towards, that is only God. And when we have this vision of just, this is my goal is to worship that God in every action that I do, then we can be free of yoga and kshema. Because our focus is God. So we're not trying to acquire or protect anything for ourselves. Our focus is God. And so when the focus is God, what happens is there's faith. There's faith that whatever I need, it will be given to me. And whatever needs to be protected, it will be protected. If at some point it has to go, it has to go. There's no point in holding on to anything or anyone in life, because nobody is ours. Nothing is ours. It's like God, but everything is God. We think we're earning for ourselves, we're doing it for ourselves. It's all Bhagavans. This whole world is God. So when we are focused on God, what happens is we build that faith. Whatever we need, it will come. Don't worry about it. So then this Nir Yoga Kshema comes. When we focus on God, faith comes. Then what happens when faith comes? Nitya Sattvastaha. Peace comes. This sattva, how sattva manifests in our life, we become very peaceful. Sattva is that sukham, that joy. We become so free from all this worry and stress and pressure. We become quite sattvic. And when that mind is peaceful, that mind is at its best. It's at its best. So everything we do that comes out of a sattvic mind will be of a very high quality. And when the mind is very peaceful, then it is capable of being equanimous. So nirdvandva. Then it doesn't arise when there's joys and sink when there's sorrows. That sattvic mind is capable of being so steady amidst whatever comes its way. It's not shaken up. It's just steady. So this is how we can eventually be free from desires. When we are equanimous, then what happens is we become very accepting of the world, and we're free from wanting anything for ourselves. This is the route to become nistraigunya, to become free from these desires that the world tempts us to have. So be focused on God. Then one has faith in God. When one has faith in God, there's a lot of peace in life. You don't have to worry about anything. When there's a lot of peace in life, then one has that capacity to be equanimous, no matter what happens. And when that happens, all of our desires for the world, they go. They just shed. And the only thing we really want is the truth. And this is the path that Lord Krishna gives Arjuna. And as I've told you, each of these words are a chapter. Nirdvandvaha comes in many, many chapters. We will see it in the Lakshanas of a Bhakta. We'll see it also here in Sthita Prajna. So we will see it here. We will see it in chapter 12. We'll see it in chapter 13. Nitya Sattvastaha, as I said, that's chapters. Chapter 14, chapter 17, chapter 18. We will see this. Niryogakshema, chapter 9. We will see this. And Atmavan, chapter 6, we will see this. And in a different way, in a different context, we will see this in chapter 6. So this is like the sutra that Lord Krishna gives Arjuna. Now Arjuna has a question, and he's saying, well, how long do I have to be in this, right? How long do I have to keep performing this karma yoga or be in this karma yoga spirit? So now we read verse number 46. Yavanartha udapane.
Yavanartha udapane.
Sarvatas samplutodake.
Sarvatas samplutodake.
Tavan sarveshu vedeshu.
Tavan sarveshu vedeshu.
Brahmanasya vijanataha.
Brahmanasya vijanataha.
Yavanartha udapane. Sarvatas samplutodake. Tavan sarveshu vedeshu. Brahmanasya vijanataha. Now, before we enter into this verse, remember that Lord Ganesha in Vedavyasa had a deal. When Ganesha was asked to be a scribe, Vedavyasaji said that Lord Ganesha told Vedavyasaji, you cannot stop. You have to keep writing. You have to keep writing. And Ganesha said, okay, I will do that. Vedavyasa said, okay, I will keep dictating. I will keep dictating. And so Ganesha has to keep writing. But Ganesha could only write what he understood. Ganesha could write only the verses which he understood. And that was the deal. Otherwise, he wouldn't write it. Because sometimes Vedavyasaji, he needed more time. He needed more time to think, So whenever he needed more time to think, he would give Lord Ganesha one of these verses that you could read in many ways. And we will see these verses there in the Bhagavad Gita. He would give Lord Ganesha one of these verses. And so this is one such verse that can be read in many ways. And today we'll see two ways to read it. It's a very beautiful verse when we think about it deeply. So it says here, Yavan. Yavan means as much. Artha. Artha means use. Udapane means reservoir. Sarvataha, everywhere. Samplutodake, everywhere when it's being flooded. Tavan, so much use. Sarveshu Vedeshu, in all the Vedas. Brahmanasya, of the Brahmana. Vijanataha, the knower of the truth. So first I will read a different meaning, and then I will read the meaning that's in your textbook. So the first meaning that I will give, I'll read in Sanskrit and then I'll explain. In this particular verse, we have to add other words for it to be complete. So it reads like this. Yatha sarvataha samplutodake udapane yavan arthaha Tavadeva tena upadiyate na sarvam. Tatha sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah tavan eva upadeya na sarvam. Okay, so I'll tell you what that means. One meaning is just as, right? Sarvataha samplutodake. Let's say if there is a huge flooding of water, huge flooding of water, like an overspill of water. Udapane yavan artha means take only what's required of that overflowing water, only whatever's required, take that and not more than that. In the same way, of all the Vedas that are there, that Brahmanaha, that person who is wanting to know the truth, Vijanataha, they should only take what's required and not more than that. So what's being implied here is our scriptures are like massive body of water. It's like a massive body of water, flooding, full flooding. And so it means that you don't have to take every single thing. We don't have to study every single thing. Just that which is required for us, that much we need to take, absorb, and live. Because as you know, the Vedas were so extensive. There was a whole Karma Kanda section, a whole Upasanas, whole Jnana Kanda section. If we take everything, we won't be able to complete it in this lifetime. So only what's required, you take it, and that you reflect upon it and you live it. So therefore, Sarva Vedeshu, in all the Vedas, just takes what's required for this Brahmanaha Vijanataha, for this person who wants to know the truth. So Arjuna's question is, how long should I engage in this Karma Yoga? So Lord Krishna says, take whatever you need, because right now what you need is Karma Yoga, and then eventually you will come to Jnana Yoga. Now we're going to see the second meaning, which is in your book. And the second meaning goes like this. It says, Sarvataha samplutodake sati udapane yavanartha asti brahmanasya vijanataha sarveshu vedeshu tavaneva artha asti. So the translation reads like this. To the Brahmana who has known the self, all the Vedas are of as much use as in a reservoir of water in a place where there's flood everywhere. So for a person, Brahmana here means the one who has knowledge, the one who knows the truth. Vijanataha means the one who's realized the truth. If there's, let's say if there's a whole reservoir, or let's say there's a whole flooding of water, what good is, will anybody be thirsty? Will anybody seek to get a cup of water if there's a whole flooding, there's all overflow of water? Will anyone seek to get a cup of water? No, right? If somebody was a millionaire, will they, if there was a competition to win $10, will they enter that competition? No. Like, I have $1 million. What am I going to do with $10, right? If somebody owns an ice cream or a frozen yogurt store, will they say, oh, I really want ice cream? Or will they beg for ice cream? No, they own a whole store, right? So for one, now what is the water here? The water here in the second meaning is that happiness, that bliss. For the one who has realized self, they're flooded with bliss. They're absolutely flooded with bliss. So when you and I give them petty drops of bliss, oh, why don't you try this? Or why don't you go here? It's a drop of bliss. They're flooded with bliss. They're flooded with Atma Sukha. So all these petty things, all these pleasures that we may enjoy, to them, it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. It's as good as $10 is as good for a millionaire. It's nothing, really. And in fact, it is said that if we take all of our joys, all of the joys, from the animals, to the minutest animal, let's say the ant, up to Brahmaji, up to, the creator, take all of our joys and put it together, of all of our lifetimes, all of our joys, all of our lifetimes, all of the creatures, that is only one drop of bliss that a realized person has. And that's all of our joys. We are only one drop of bliss that a realized person has. That much is their joy. So meaning, Arjuna, you have to perform this karma yoga until you are fit to realize this truth. Until you are flooded with this divine bliss, divine self, until you are flooded with that, perform this, purify your mind so that eventually you can get to this state. And when you are in this state, there will be no need for any talk of any desire, of pursuit of any pleasure, because you will then be overflowing. You will be full of joy. In fact, people will derive joy from you. And that is the beauty of Atma Sukham. You become overflowing with joy, with bliss, and you flow through others as well. And that's what we should aspire for. So perform that karma yoga, purify your mind, get yourself ready so you too can experience this bliss. Now, Arjuna is, now his eyes are, like open, because it's such a beautiful thing. Won't everyone want such a bliss in life? Won't everyone want to be overflowing with that love, with that peace? Won't anyone want that? So Arjuna wants that, right? He clearly wants this. So now it's as if he's thinking, okay, now tell me, how do I perform this karma yoga? You gave me the attitudes. You did say Atmavan, Niryogakshema, Nitya Sattvastaha. You said all of that. You said Nitya Sattvastaha, Nirdvandvaha. But you told me these traits. But could you tell me practically? Just tell me practically, how can I engage in this karma yoga? And so now we bring forth verse 2.47, which is a very, very popular verse. Everybody, when anyone's asked, okay, what's the Bhagavad Gita? They'll quote this verse. This is the Bhagavad Gita. This is the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is more than this, but this is the verse that they'll keep quoting. And so this verse we must memorize, and we must understand every single bit of it. Okay? So I will chant it. Karmanyevadhikaraste
Karmanyevadhikaraste
ma phaleshu kadachana
ma phaleshu kadachana
ma karma phalaheturbhuhu
ma karma phalaheturbhuhu
ma te sangostva karmani
ma te sangostva karmani
Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhuhu ma te sangostva karmani. So, what does this verse say? So first, let's see word for word. Karmani eva adhikaraha te. Te. So, te, you, Arjuna. Karmani, in work. Eva, in work only. Adhikaraha is your right. Your right is only in work. This is the first pada. Ma phaleshu kadachana. Kadachana means never. Then not in the fruit. Ma means like a negative. So not to its fruits. Phaleshu means fruits. So second pada, but never to its fruits. The third pada, ma karma phala hetur bhuhu. Bhuhu means, ma bhuhu means don't become. Don't become what? Karma phala hetu, whose motive is just the selfish pursuit of action, whose motive is just selfish action. So let not the fruit of action be thy motive. Mate sangha astu akarmani. And don't let attachment be to inaction. Okay? So thy right is to work only, never to its fruits. Let not the fruit of action be thy motive, and nor let thy attachment be to inaction. So let us see this one by one. Okay? Now first we will take up the last bit. Ma te sangaha astu karmani. Means don't be attached to inaction. The first thing that we do is we become lazy. So the first thing Lord Krishna's first advice is, don't become lazy. Don't become lazy. Sometimes we get attached to not doing anything. And when we don't do anything, what happens is our body stops functioning properly. Our health goes. In fact, right now, there's not much movement that we do, right? Even to turn off our lights and to turn off electricity, we can do it with an iPad. We don't have to get up, isn't it? And sometimes we don't even have to drive a car. We can sit in the car, but we don't have to drive it. It will drive on its own, right? And what happens is we lose alertness, because driving requires a lot of alertness. It requires us to look, to check the back, to focus, to be present. But even that we lose. And sometimes also because we have GPS, we lose our memory also. We don't have to remember, just GPS it. Even if it's like 5 minutes away, just GPS it, isn't it? So what happens is when we don't act, our body breaks down, our health breaks down, and we become inert. Whatever potentials that are there in us, they don't manifest. We're not able to use it. Our talent doesn't come out. Our ability doesn't come out. So he says, first thing is, don't be attached to inaction. You must work. But then the question is, but you're telling me not to have the fruits as a motive. Why should I work? Why should I work if it's not about the result? Why should I work? So he will give us that reason. But he's saying, first is, get yourself up. Wake yourself up out of tamas. So this line, ma te sangaha astu akarmani, is get out of tamas. And don't think that you're working just for your own selfish purpose. Even for the duty, even for your duty, you should work. So get up, get out, and work. Work means perform activity. I'm not just saying career or job, I'm saying perform activity. Do your duty. That's exactly what it means. Now, someone might say, but it's not that I'm lazy. It's not that there's so many things I want. There's so many things I want to pursue. I mean, I want more comfort. I want more pleasure. I want to travel. I want a great social life. I want a bigger house. I want so many, many things. So he says, ma karma phala hetur bhuhu. Don't let the motive of your action be your own selfish desire. And this, he's getting us out of rajas. He's getting us out of a rajasic mentality. I know there may be selfish desires for this world. There's to pursue this, to pursue that, but get out of that mentality. That's not what life is about. And so, one might think, well, if I'm not pursuing pleasure or things that I like or enjoyment in life, then what is it about? What am I supposed to do? So he says, Karmani eva adhikaraha. Your right is only to perform your duty. Your right is not to give up action. Your right is not to perform selfish action or desire prompted action. Your right is only to do your duty. So if you remember, before we had talked about the different kinds of karmas, right? We had talked about nitya karma, our daily duties, naimitika karmas, our occasional duties, kamya karma, our desire prompted action, nishiddha karma, prohibited action. So our right is not to perform prohibited action. Our right is not to perform selfish action, but our right is to do our duty. That is where we're at. That's what we must do with ourselves. And one might think, but how do I do this? And why should I do this? And what is the purpose of this whole thing? Why are you telling me to perform my duty? Why is the Bhagavad Gita about duty, duty, duty? Why is this word keep coming up? He's saying here, Karamani eva means right now, Arjuna, this eva word means your right now is only in karma, because only in karma I have spoken to you about Sankhya Yoga or Sankhya Buddhi. I have spoken to you about the knowledge of the self. I have spoken to you about it in this very chapter. And I have told you, but you didn't get it. I told you who you are. I told you you are that self. You are pure awareness. You are consciousness. You are bliss. You are that seat. And upon realizing that, one is fulfilled. And I have told you that. But Arjuna, you didn't get that. You didn't absorb it. And therefore, that shows that your mind needs a certain kind of purification. And therefore, the motive of your act is not for your personal motivation, but it's for divine inspiration. It's to please God, because that's what's needed in your life right now. Don't forget, the goal of life is to realize the truth. This is what we're here for. This is what we're born to do. We are born to realize the truth. This is it. And therefore, what's preparing us to realize that is our duty. In the act of performing our duty for duty's sake, what happens is the mind becomes purified. We're not doing it because most of the work we do is to fatten up our ego. We want to fatten up our ego. We want our ego to look good. We want to look better. We want to gain praise, appreciation, recognition, all of those things. This is not that. This work called duty is actually to reduce the ego. And that is your right to perform your duty and nothing else. Focus on that. Now, to even just do that, that's not easy. To just focus on our duty, that's not easy. Then he says, get out of tamas. Don't think you can be without action. Get out of rajas. Get out of selfish, prompted desire action. Perform only your duty as a worship of God. And this is what's called Ishwararpana Buddhi. This is worship of God. And what should I do? Ma phaleshu kadachana. Let go of the results. Perform the duty and let go of the results. Now, this letting go of the results becomes very difficult for us. What exactly does this mean? So first of all, the Bhagavad Gita is not saying don't think about the future. That's not correct. What it's saying is that have a purpose, have a vision, have a goal. When we think about the future with clarity, it's called envisioning. We all do it. We all have a vision. We all plan. We all work out a system. That's fine. But what the Bhagavad Gita is saying, don't worry about the future. You can think about it. You can envision it, but don't worry about it. Because when we worry about this, it dissipates all of our energy. When we're here just thinking about what will happen, how will it be, will they like it, will they not like it? All of our mind is going into the future, which is not born yet. So you have 40% of your mind, sometimes even 50, going to that future, and we have 60% in the present action. Then what do you think will be the quality of that action? The quality of that action will be so low and so minimal because the mind is just thinking elsewhere. So it's saying, don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Just focus right now on what's in your hand. Focus on the present. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is saying. And the Bhagavad Gita is so logical because if you think about it, we can't control the future. We cannot. In fact, 99.9% of things in life we can't control. Only 0.1%, which is our effort and our attitude, that much we can control. Just think about it. Just think, let's say, I'll give you a few examples so this can make you think. Let's say you had to prepare a presentation, right? You had to make a presentation now to present in front of many people. And you're working on your presentation. Now, what if while working in your presentation, you're thinking, who's going to show up? What if this person shows up? What if they don't show up? Will they like it or will they not like it? How will it be? What will they, how many stars will they give me? Or where will I go after this? Or what will I do after this? If all these thoughts are coming while one's making their presentation, then the mind will be completely dissipated. And then on top of that, when you get to the presentation, when you get to the place where you have to present, we have no control of who's going to show up. We have no control if they're going to like it or not, because likes and dislikes are based on people's vasanas. We have no control if the internet's going to work, right? There's no control about the sound outside, like there would be no fire, there would be no earthquake. There's no control over that. We have no control, or if somebody were to get sick and the whole thing were to be canceled. I mean, there's so many things we can't control. When we do a Zoom class, we can't control Zoom, we can't control the internet, we can't control so many things. We can't control who comes, what happens, we can't control it. And so therefore, to worry and obsess over something that I cannot control is highly illogical. So for all of us who think we're rational thinkers, if we worry, we're not rational. It's not objective. It's absolutely irrational. It's like when you raise a child. When you raise a child, what happens is this ma phaleshu kadachana is very much, one should always think about it, because when you raise a child, you give everything to that child. Now, what happens if you sit there and think, what will my child grow up to be? Or will they take this career, or will they take that career? Or who will they marry? Or what if, they pick someone I don't like? Or what if they decide they don't want to marry? What if they want to be a monk? Right? All these, or what if my child settles so far from me? What am I going to do? Isn't it? And we're worrying and worrying. All that worrying, we can't control how that child's going to turn out. The child has come with their own vasanas. And all of that worrying takes us away from what's really important, which is the child's evolution. The child is here to evolve and to realize the truth also, not just you and me. And so the best thing we can do is to give our best in everything and completely let go. Completely let go. This is called Karma Yoga. It's a science. It's an art. It's highly logical. And if one practices it, one will find a lot of peace. So here's what we're saying now. Look at the whole big picture. Don't not act because you're thinking, oh, I'm not supposed to think about the results. I'm not supposed to think about what's going to happen. So I might as well not act. Or if one is lazy, they'll say, I don't want to act. So give that up. Give up acting for our own selfish pursuits, because then our minds will be so dissipated and we'll get stuck. Then stick to whatever is our duty. In life, wherever we are placed, a certain duty is given to us. Perform that role to perfection as a worship of God, because that will give me purification. And when I perform that duty, let go. Let go, because if I keep worrying about it, it dissipates my energy. And if I keep worrying about it, it's so illogical that I can't control it. In life, either we will get what we want, either we will get what we don't want, more of what we want, or less of what we want. We cannot control that. If you go to a restaurant and you order something, your favorite dish, well, sometimes you'll get it exactly like you want, right? Sometimes then they put more spice. So they then say it's not what you want. It's not exactly what you want. Sometimes if they're in a good mood, they'll give you free dessert. Then you get more than what you want. But sometimes that dish will not be available for you and you won't get what you want. And life is like this. So instead of playing this game and being on highs and lows, just be steady and accept whatever we get is what we're meant to get. And so if we look at the joy of Karma Yoga, what kind of joy does a Karma Yogi experience when they follow this formula? The joy of performing one's duty, the joy of doing what's right at the required time, the joy of giving your all to that action, the joy of acceptance, and the joy of being able to purify our minds for something higher. This is the joy of a Karma Yogi. Now, isn't that much, much deeper than a joy derived out of a sensual pleasure or out of enjoying something in the world? That's what Lord Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna. Okay, so today I'll just summarize what we've done, and I want us to just be in this thought frame of Karma Yoga. This is a very beautiful verse. If we can only live it, it will be very, very beneficial. So today we really talked about verses 45, 46, and 47. And the premises in 45, Lord Krishna gives Arjuna the qualities of really how to be free from these desires. So first, Atmavan, have your focus as God. When your focus is God or something higher, then your actions will be very, very pure. And what will happen is one will develop a lot of faith, and they can be free from striving to acquire, striving to, keep it, to protect it. You can be free from all of that because you'll have absolute faith. Whatever needs to come in your life will come. Whatever needs to go will go. And when that happens, one becomes very sattvic. And when one becomes very sattvic, they're able to deal with the ups and downs of life very well. And eventually that mind sheds its desires for the world. Why should I do this? Do it because that Brahmananda, that bliss of the self, is like, this overflowing water. It's a flood of bliss. To one who has experienced the bliss of the self, or to one who knows the self, any joy of the world will just be like a small glass of water compared to the flood of joy that they're feeling right now. So aim for that. Aim to be that flood of joy. How do I do that? Right now, Arjuna, which means us, you start with Karma Yoga. Because, Arjuna, I talked to you about Sankhya Yoga, the self, but you didn't seem to get it. Right now, just practice this. Practice this. Act in this world, work in this world, but do it selflessly. Do it as a worship of God. Do your duties as a worship of God. And Arjuna, just let go. Just let go. That's all. Now, if we cannot practice all of this, if we find this is too much, then just practice letting go. And that will help pave the way to making us more selfless as we get further on the path. This again comes out very beautifully in chapter 12. And when it comes there, we will see it. But of course, we also have so much more about Karma Yoga in chapter 3 and a few more verses in chapter 2. So today we stop here, say the closing prayer. And then I have one announcement, and then any questions you can take. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.